Welcome to Empowered Returns, a show that surfaces forward-thinking real estate advice that investors and developers need to help them invest smarter and build better. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Returns. We are here today with Eric Robinson of RODE Architects. We're psyched to have you, and as always with PT, co-hosting with myself. But welcome, Eric. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Hey, great to have you here, man. Excited
Good to
about
see
it.
you guys.
Yeah. Hi, Mike.
Hello, PT. Good. Day's good so far?
Awesome. Yeah.
That's
great.
not what you just said like 2 minutes ago.
It's going to be one of those podcasts that we're going to do.
Just checking
if that's
in.
what you were, and we can go
Let's
all
go.
day. Let's do it.
I'm ready
All
to
right.
rally.
Good. Plenty of hot takes today.
Yeah.
This is great.
All right.
I love it.
Good.
So, Eric, why don't you just give us a little background how you got into the architecture business? Give us a little brief
Into the
Eric
gig?
bio. Yeah.
It's, a very long and winding road. But all the way back into the Wayback Machine of high school, I was one of those kids who took a couple of the drawing classes that, the easy A's, I thought, and took those and had a couple good professors. Had a really bad one my senior year, and he's like, yeah, we got in a huge fight about our final project, and he was like, you'll never be an architect. And I was like, cool, I don't really want to be one anyways. It's stupid, and then left and went to, I went to actually Greensboro, UNCG, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and rushed a fraternity and did some of the dumb college things you do. And I happened to take an art class, and the guy's like, hey, have you ever thought about architecture? And told him the story, and he's like, you should think about it. And he said, you should transfer to NC State, and they have an awesome design program there, and just see what happens. And I was like, whatever, had no plan, no ideas really. And so I did, and I started at State, and they had an awesome design-based program versus a technical architecture program, and it fit with what I how I was, I guess, made. And had a great handful of years there. Met, which we'll talk about probably, my business partner there my sophomore year, because I transferred in his freshman year. But and then I worked in Richmond for a couple of years between, and then I went to UVA for grad school. Had an amazing run there. And then one of my professors there was a visiting professor in from Boston that I had never heard of. It was a husband and wife team, and they were teaching the semester as a sort of outside professor or whatever. And I took their class, and we just kind of clicked pretty well. And they brought a real project to Studio, which is kind of crazy. Mm. It was for a camp in Wyoming for the Coca-Cola Foundation. And we all flew out there and designed our camps in our little classrooms or whatever. And then when I got back, graduated, they said, come work for us if you want to come to Boston. And my wife's from North Carolina, and she's like, we're not going to Boston. And next thing I know, we're in a moving van driving up, and I got a job there and worked there for about almost 10 years, actually. Wow. And then, so that was kind of what set the career in motion.
So what, so that camp for the Coca-Cola Foundation, that was a pretty cool story. So it's in Wyoming, it's for inner city kids. They end up hiring you. What type of work did you do for them over that decade plus or minus? And then sort of what led you to decide to go out and start RODE?
Yeah. So I think I actually worked on the camp when I went to work for them. And which was awesome because I was so familiar with the project. I like to claim there was some of my stuff in there from school. And I worked on that. So we were flying out to Wyoming, and it was an amazing environment, of course. And then the whole ethos of the project was like unbelievable. I should probably just hung up my T-square at the time and resigned because, those are one in a lifetime projects in some way. And I was such a kid and no idea what I was doing, but I was doing work all over the country there. I was traveling a ton, museums in Florida, student unions in South Dakota. I did a border crossing in Texas for the GSA, and you hear it about now, crazy on the news. So I was like all over the place, really working on pretty high-end design projects, the ones that were up for national awards and things like that. And it was an awesome run. It was just exhausting. I was traveling a lot, working even more, and had a family at that time that was young later in those years, and Then my father actually passed away, not suddenly, but just in his later years. And, it was one of those realization of moments like, hey, I need to spend a little more time with my family and on my life. And, I'm doing great things. And, my boss and I were very close. And I just said, hey, I need a change. And that was really sort of, for me, the impetus of to do something different. RODE was sort of kind of out there, but it wasn't really there yet. And then Kevin and I connected up and had never worked together. We were just buddies, like I said, from undergraduate. And that kind of cast the first sort of moment of RODE back it was in actually about 2005. So it's been a little while, but that was the moment of it. So.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
What from the beginning stages of RODE, did you have a certain type of architecture you guys were meant to get into, or is it just scrapping and claring in those days?
Hell no, we had nothing. I mean, these are story times, right?
Of course it is. This is what podcasts are for.
100%. That's right.
So
we like to dive deep on the show, by the way. So go deep.
So
please.
So I moved to Boston in 1999. That's when I graduated. My girlfriend, which is now my wife, at the time we lived in the South End for 1 year, and we didn't really know Boston. I was traveling a ton. She was working a ton in Cambridge, actually, and our landlord's like, I'm selling your place. Get out of the South End, right? And we're like, oh, we love it. No. Well, we had no money. We were architects, no money. And we pulled out the newspaper at the time, like the actual newspaper, and went to, I think it was like sorted by price or something. I don't really remember, but we went to the lowest price thing we could find, which was in Dorchester. And we had no idea where Dorchester was. We had nothing. We just went. It was a single family house, not very big, right by the Savin Hill T station. 20-something years ago, and we begged our parents for a little bit of cash. We bought that place, and we've been there ever since. Never going to leave. Going out with a toe tag, as I say.
There you go.
It's just been amazing for us. And I think it's about a year and a half, 2 years later, my neighbor came to us and he said, hey, I'm selling. Do you know anybody that might want to buy off the market? I'm like, I got the perfect sucker. Dialed up Kevin.
Oh, no way. You guys are neighbors too?
So one house between us.
Oh my God, I would kill him if he lived next door to me.
One house between us. So we weren't direct neighbors, but there was a house between us, right?
Yeah.
So,
and you've since
I'm sure that guy's got a real nice, quaint lifestyle there.
Yeah. So before I knew it,
class at his house.
Before I knew it, Kevin was moving truck on the street, and him and his wife, who's also named Jennifer, we both have Jennifer wives.
Oh boy.
Moved in, and we were just friends, right? We hadn't worked together. This was all way before any of that, and so, but we were tight, and that's where sort of the foundation of eventually getting, let's do something. So Dorchester together and sort of being is where it all started. We still both live there. He has moved now since not too far, quarter mile maybe, so it's a little bit of distance, but not anything more than that. But we had nothing, no work really. We were still working at our old firms because we were at such levels and sort of responsibility. It took a little while to get out, a couple of years really.
Yeah.
But we had no real work. Kevin kind of poached a Harvard project from his former employer, which I won't say who it is, and it was a nice little nugget that floated us for a while, a year or so. We had some little bit of money coming in. And then we just started pounding the pavement in Dorchester. We went to like all the nonprofits, all the EDCs, all our neighbors. Anybody need anything? We were doing bathroom renovations for people. But it just really started in that way. And then we got a couple smaller kind of multifamilies around, and that's kind of it's the history of that.
Yeah.
That's how it started. Yeah.
Like most businesses getting off the ground, you're just scrapping and clawing for what you can get, and then as things evolve, you learn, you grow, you find your fit in the world, so to speak, in the industry, in the business, and I'm sure that's similar to how it evolved from there. But what would you say is your focus these days? What type of projects are you mostly working on?
So I mean, We try to stay diverse. I mean, the housing market obviously is out of control and banging, and it still is from our seats. So that's certainly swallowed up a good chunk of our life, in terms of that. We're probably running really about 65% of our work is multifamily.
Yep.
The rest is a pretty wide mix, but probably second in that is hospitality type work. We do a ton of restaurants, and we're also seeing more and more, which is pretty cool, the kind of amenity spaces associated with a lot of these life sciences projects. Mm-hmm. So these developers are doing big campuses, and then they need something for, staff, for
yep.
food, service, athletic, workout places or whatever. And we're sort of doing those parts. So we're kind of doing the fun part of lab projects.
Right. Yeah, that
right?
was interesting when you were telling me about that. Like, you don't think everyone kind of, at least there's this perception of amenities spaces being like, predominantly in residential buildings, right?
Yeah.
Some office buildings, obviously,
sure.
or we'll have some focus on amenities. But life science and amenities, I just didn't really kind of put that together. And you were saying that that's been a big piece of business lately. And,
it's marketing, right? In some way, and they have to, just like all of our other work, you got to figure out how you're going to differentiate yourselves, right? And so that's been a nice piece of work that seems to continue. We're doing more of those, which is very fun.
I wouldn't be surprised because it's like the amenitization of everything right now.
Everything.
Days. I mean, from colleges, universities, even high schools, private schools, and obviously housing is traditional, but pretty much even in urban and city development, you're thinking about the places and not just the buildings around it, and how that's being programmed and amenitized, and so. I expect that's a trend that will continue, which sounds like it's good fun for you.
It's really derived, I think, from the experience aspect of it, right? And that ties so sweetly back to our restaurant work, where we all go out to restaurants and the food's good, but the environment and the experience has to be well sort of put together, and we believe. And so I think early on, we like to say we were early adopters of just sort of when our multifamily work was coming. It was more than just the units, right? The units, and it was more about the sort of experience and the sort of place where these folks are going to live means something.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that derives from a lot of that sort of early kicking and screaming of how do we differentiate ourselves? What do we think about? And so it's been this sort of pretty nice kind of blend of the work that's been cool, actually. And we're we just finished a fairly large I'll say food hall-ish program for a very large tech that we can't say, which everybody can kind of maybe
I thought we were making an announcement on this podcast.
No. And
I won't even say what it rhymes with because definitely
because it has a rhymer, I'm sure, but I don't know. It's probably not a real word, but that was another opportunity to sort of be in an environment that was different, and bring our sort of expertise. And we're all designers in a lot of ways, but we also have interior designers on staff that are kind of kick-ass.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome. So I want to kind of get back into the weeds on some of this stuff specifically, but maybe it might make sense just to kind of peel it back one layer. And you talked about, once you guys got going, you started getting some work, how you're going to differentiate yourself. What is kind of the secret sauce of RODE, right? If you had to really kind of, encapsulate it quickly, how would you define it?
Quickly, as you've learned, I don't do quickly.
No, but that makes
PT.
Two of us. Yeah.
I think probably the real hallmark of where we believe we're different is in our community process, actually. So it's not even the design work and not even the interiors. It's about our process and dealing with the community that we're designing in and for. And that definitely came from the Dorchester work that we did, where we were out in the community busting our ass to get these projects approved, because it was definitely the NIMBYs were out, and we were finding that it was a pretty tough slug, and we really kind of honed our craft and our skill, because one, we were on our own little planning board for our own community, so we were on the other side, and we were seeing the junk that people were kind of proposing, and then we learned like, wait, why don't we talk about why are you doing these things, and what makes this project different than the one that's going to be like hulking on top of somebody, right? And they're all like up in arms about it. And so we kind of honed our craft to really be responsible and respectful of where we're designing and where we're going into these communities. So that's kind of that is at the heart of RODE. After that, it's design. We are not the cookie cutter design firm. There's a ton of those in the city that can, whatever, outdo.
They're not coming on this podcast.
Yeah, they can out basic design us, no problem, right? And you see it around, and I think people are tired of that, and that's fine. And there's a place for that. So they're not judging that, but I think a little bit. But what we
sounded pretty damn.
We want to find projects that and clients that want something a little more special, a little more thoughtful, a little bit more sort of meaningful. It just, for us, it makes a better project, and also it's like, hell, I only have so much time in the day. I want to do stuff that kind of is rewarding at some level. So. And we've had some really unbelievable projects that, again, going back to some of the other stuff, I can't believe some of the stuff that we're working on now and have worked on. It's like crazy.
It's so helpful to work with an architecture team like you from our perspective, too, when we're doing the end marketing and sales or Lisa, because be able to have a cool design that is not cookie cutter and different allows you to market and brand a building and a community in a much more powerful way, too. So it is exciting. I think there's... And we've talked to other guests and clients about this as well, that the importance of investing in design cannot be understated. Yeah. And so, it's exciting when you talk to an architect like you, who when your team was so excited about like actually doing stuff that's new and different and cool, and not just, cookie cutter to try to sort of maximize the envelope and that's the end of the story type of thing. So
yeah, I mean, when you really boil it all down, like every building's the same, right? You got windows and you got walls and it's just how you do them a little differently and how you think about it a little differently. And it's like, I don't think we're any more expensive than anybody else. So it's not, it's just, I think it's just a little bit of a different way to think about it. And we like that. We like that. We had some unbelievably challenging sites to work on, which is cool, right?
Yeah.
How do you get anything to even work here? Well, let's think about it, right? And we doodle and draw and do all that stuff that everybody does. But we talk a lot about the work and try to like strategize how do we make it better and sort of really thoughtful. And and I think we create value. I mean, to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, we create value for our clients on some level, and that's one of the things that I just believe in, that design can do that. And,
so how do you work? Say a client's coming in, they have a site, maybe it's a challenging site, who knows, but let's just assume it's a housing development for a second here. How do you guys first approach it when a client says, "Hey, I have this site. What's the next step for you guys to understand how can you work with that client to sort of maximize obviously the economic viability of the project, but also make sure you're able to unlock a cool design?"
Yeah. So we have a fairly rigorous process actually at the office, which we adhere pretty well to. But a lot of it, almost all of, I don't even know what the percent, I'll say 90%, 95%, is all referral work. So most of the folks coming to us already know a little bit about who we are and what we do and how we work on some level. Not everybody, and so that helps us, because then we can talk about our process and like, hey, we're gonna explore some ideas with you, right? So we will. A project comes in, and actually this just happened yesterday, which was very cool. Like one of our clients called and he's like, "Oh my God, we got last call for offers on." Well, he called. He said, "Can you look at the site for us?" And I was like, "Sure, no problem. Let me see what I can do. Grab a couple people over the next couple of days or whatever." And I get like an email or a text or something from him, felt like an hour later. He's like, "We just learned last call for offers is Thursday morning," and we're like.
Just learned, yes. Never heard that before.
Fire drill with the developer client?
Good client. I believe him. I'm an optimist, and I believe people. I'm sort of probably, but we're like, fine. Rolled up the sleeves, laid out the site plan, pulled out the trace with the 5 of my folks, and we just talked about it, strategized, drew it up, handed over. Someone, boom, go. And the work, if we have a little bit more of a linear trajectory, it's kind of the same. I mean, we just might spend a little more time on it. And granted, he's not going to build this. He will hopefully, but I mean, this was ideas, right? But we do start in the idea phase. Like, how do we make this thing better than what people could think it could be, right? The client comes in, I got this site, I don't know, I could think of this. Let's blow him away or her away and give them something that it's gonna make more value, give them something to think about, push them a little bit. We do, we kind of have this, I don't know if we patent it, probably not, but small, medium, and large approach is how we really think about each of our projects, where we'll, smaller intervention, medium, or large, and that is applicable to any kind of project, like a reno or even a resi project. Like, let's go big, right? Let's put a 20-story tower on something. PT knows what I'm talking about. Or let's be, they want an easier permitting process, so we think that's a sort of kind of I'll say slam dunk. There's no slam dunks in the city, but there's a process there.
Yeah.
So we strategize up front with our clients on goals and what are the expectations, and sort of use that to really influence the process. And then we jump into our process, which is sort of, and it's not esoteric, but we're a concept-driven firm. So we develop a concept for the site, and that concept hangs throughout the process. And it depends on what it is. So each project's different, but we apply a concept to all of our projects, and it guides the principles of design, what the expectations of the goals are, whatever it might be. Is it passive house, super sustainable? Is it affordable housing? We're doing a huge project with Pine Street Inn right now, for supportive housing for formerly homeless people. So it has this sort of these different things that go along with each project that we kind of a touch point that keeps constant throughout the project. And it might change, of course, but it's still there. So we sort of think about our projects in that way. And so,
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
How much does it help or hurt your process if a developer or other client comes in with like a pretty well-formed vision?
We don't do them. I mean, or not. We don't do them. We say, is that really where it is?
Yeah.
And we'll give honest feedback. Actually, we've had a handful of people come to us and like, hey, what do you guys think? And we're like, huh. And we'll mark it up or talk to them about it. And we're like, yeah, we do that. And sometimes they're like, oh, cool. It's worth the time and effort to go back and do it, or it's not.
Right.
That's fine. We're not in it. We try to take this whole idea, we're just doing our job, right? We're designers. I don't have to do every project in the city. I don't have to do everything. If I can help somebody with a little sketch or a free idea or something like that, or connect them with somebody, that's awesome, right? I'm making a connection. I'm helping somebody else out, and I'm a big believer in karma. So people, I believe really strongly in that. So I think it's just hey, just do the right thing and help people and figure it out, and it comes around. So.
Yeah, no, it's sort of that theory of abundance, and being a giver, this stuff is gonna come around to you, right?
There's tons of work right now. I mean, maybe when it gets tighter, there won't be as much. And I'll take a different approach, and
we're all hunting squirrels in the street. You guys, right? Come back and tell us a different story.
It's coming. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, it's not. I'm just kidding. Nobody believe that. It's not coming. No recession.
I'm really happy we have an excellent editor for this episode.
Yeah, we do. So I think you undersold it a little bit, and when you're just like, oh, we bring some value. You bring a ton of value, right? I think anyone who is an expert at their craft that has a real critical part of the role on a development team adds a ton of value. I think the architect is really high up the food chain with that. I think some people might not realize it, but how big is your role in entitlements, and how much value and impact do you think you can have if you're in early in that community process with the right concept-driven design? How much does that move the needle from a value standpoint for a developer to have the right architect team up with them during entitlements? Because you see a lot of times they'll get schematics done, and then they're like, oh, now I got to get CDs. Now I'll bring in a different architect, And I see a ton of that, and it always boggles my mind because the building will typically suck, the one that got approved, and then it's someone has to square peg round hole, figure out a way to make that sucky building good, right? And so do you guys find yourselves in that position? Will you even get in that position, or what do you bring to the table up front that you think really is going to drive value for developers?
For us, that entitlements phase is the most important piece. It sets everything. I mean, for us it does, and for the project it does. And we probably shouldn't say don't or never. I don't know if we have. I don't think we've ever taken over a project for another firm that was entitled. Maybe one, but we changed it. But for us, we want to be there from day one to day done, right? And that's important to us. And you just talked about like when experts come to the table. We believe everybody's an expert in terms of their own sort of like knowledge base or whatever. So the developers obviously bring their sort of expertise in land finding deals and sort of figuring out the financing and all of the stuff that goes with that. You guys, we love you guys up early, right? As much as and we talk to our clients a lot. And the smaller ones aren't so sophisticated in some of this ways, and right. We're like, hey, reach out to a broker and understand what the market's driving in this neighborhood for this site, right? It changes. You guys know.
Real time.
Every block, every whatever is different. That helps us because if, is this a 3-bedroom play or is this like a friggin' tiniest studio? You can't even get a damn bed, right? Play. What is this? Because that matters, especially for the entitlements phase of the parking ratios, the density, everything matters up front. So we really do believe people come to the table, our developers come as experts, what they want to see, but we also want to be respected as experts in the field from design standpoint, right? So we want to be heard and made sure we're heard. And, those are the clients that we sort of really appreciate. Yeah. An educated client is our best client. And I think that sounds like that's like a chicken ad or something like that. But like, yeah.
I have no idea where you're going with that.
You know what I mean? Like, Purdue had anyway, forget it. But, but that's important, right? It's like, it's helpful. And to have the dialogue is even more helpful.
Right.
Like, and so.
How do you usually work with a client that you're trying to shift and sort of maybe expand their horizons a little bit from that, like, this is just a simple 5/1 project or something, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, let's think about something a little bit different.
We got some good 5/1s.
Not saying, yeah.
No. I think it's that sort of design process that is sort of like is our process, right? But it is. We do talk about like the small, medium, and large approach, and that might have sort of like fine slices in it, but we want to. It's easy and fast for us to think creatively and upfront when we're just drawing some lines, right? It's doodles, it's whatever. Doesn't cost that much, but it might change the needle for them on. Wait, you think if I provide this public space for the neighborhood or whatever it is, but I go up 2 more floors, you think that's viable? And we're like, yes, because we are thinking about that community process, right? We're thinking about how we're going to talk to the community about why is this project good for this site, this neighborhood. It's specific to this site and neighborhood. It's not just like, UFO, drop something in there. No, we talk about it, and we talk about slow rolling our process a little bit. Maybe that's where some of our clients, we want to go through the necessary steps, but we believe at the end of the entitlements, it's a better project and it's going to be embraced by the community and it's going to be a better sort of functioning project for our clients and our developers. So that's what we believe, and you ain't going to change it. Or maybe you will.
Unless PT has an opposing opinion. There. No, I agree. I think it is so important to have that mindset from the beginning. Like, let's think what can really be done there, and for 2 aspects of that are key, right? Obviously, you've got to make a project economically viable.
Of course.
But you've also got to make it work for the community and the neighborhood it sits in for 2 reasons. For the people that already live there, but for the new people coming in too, to really build a fantastic place for them to live too, and improve the community. I think that's what development can really do in its best case scenarios, and that design and architecture process is really so critical in that.
And listen, there's a lot of like negativity out there about the community process and all that bullshit. I think it's great. I love the community process. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's a whatever walk in the park, but it hones the skill of the project and the team to get the project right. And Doesn't mean you bend over backward for the community. Doesn't mean you do what they say. It means that you have a dialogue and appreciation of what we're trying to do, and we're listening to what you want. And they're not going to love everything. That's okay. And we're not going to love everything either. So it's this really nice balance. And listen, we've worked in every neighborhood in the city, and they all have their own, sort of buttons and sort of ideas and things, and that's cool. That's okay. It's their neighborhood, and we're going into it, so we need to listen a little bit. And I think the healthiest projects, in terms of the best projects, have been healthy community dialogues, and it's great. And sometimes it takes a little longer, but that's okay. And at the end, if we have a project that still works for the client and maybe exceeded their expectations, and the neighbors can embrace you afterwards, and we've had this happen multiple times where we've been at projects, and one was special for us was 3200 Washington Street in JP, which was one of the sort of earlier bigger projects on Washington Street in JP, and it was a brutal process, really, really brutal, and not for the reasons of just the reason. And there was one of the reporters, I won't say who, but he was following the whole thing through the process. And at the end, and I probably shouldn't say this actually now that I think about it, because he told me not to say anything. But at the end, we were working actually another project down the street, and he actually came up to me and said, "You know what? What you guys said you were going to do, you delivered." And I was like, "That's freaking awesome!" Like, right? Right. The extra space on the plaza, the trees, the experience of the neighborhood, right? Yep. You have room to move through this. You don't feel like overwhelmed by it. We pulled it back. Whatever, we did a million things about it. So those are like the moments where we're like, hell yeah, we're doing something right. So we want to keep doing it.
I just always found that it's kind of there's some interesting crossover, and can you speak to it a little bit between kind of your core areas of work, obviously predominantly on the resi side with the multifamily, but then the hospitality side, and how those have kind of conjoined as far as the approach you take. And then specifically one thing that I think differentiates RODE from a lot of other firms that are out there is the focus on interiors, that dedicated interiors team, and really kind of stepping it up a level from that standpoint, aesthetically, both in unit and common space and amenity space and all that. And can you kind of speak to how that sort of evolved and sort of how you guys approach it, on a firm level as you look at all these different types of work?
Yeah. So, back in the day, I'll say, when it was, we were working through and developing and learning RODE for our own selves. We thought we were doing some pretty good work, right? We were like, stuff's pretty good. It's not so bad. Looks a little different than others, whatever. But what we felt like we were missing was this sort of the blend of the interior exterior, right? This sort of moment of like, we were all architects at the time, and we really were like, we need to get an interiors person in here. And we found one in Jess Haley, who runs she's now principal at RODE. She's the best. She's awesome. She's kind of pretty much the best. Hopefully, she'll hear this. But I don't want to pump her up too much. But she came on board, and it just like clicked it all, like boom, bam, right? And
can you do that one more time?
Boom, bam.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. And what it did was it just upped it another level, right?
Yeah.
And that's in kind of everything, but when you really have an amazing dialogue between the interior and the exterior of a building, it's when we are kind of designing these things for people to be in, right? No matter what it is, right? It's like resi, restaurant, lab building. People are going to be using this thing, and so it's kind of about the people, right? So the interior is actually kind of more important than the architecture in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. And so, like, when we pulled that in and Jess in, it just kind of like moved it a whole nother needle, right? A whole nother level. And then, she brought in her sort of desire and kind of want to do more restaurant hospitality work than she was doing before at her old place. And, she's really kind of like knocked it out of the park. As like, she's one of the go-to, I think, in hospitality and interior designers in the city and the Northeast or whatever. She's just unbelievable. And she now has a team. There's 5 interior designers that like are awesome, right? And they are just part of our process. So it's not like we design a building and we say, hand it to the interiors team. Oh no, that concept is all about the experience and starts from beginning to end. So they're part of the unit layouts, figuring out the common areas when we're designing the building. Like, and so, because it needs to be done then, because you got to bake it in then, right? And so that's been kind of critical to, I think, the success of us pulling the whole thing together.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. One of the things you just mentioned that really resonated with me was when you said, it's about building for people to either live there or work there or eat or play or whatever it might be. And I feel like sometimes that gets lost when you have a pro forma spreadsheet and you got plans on a page and some line drawings, and oftentimes that gets lost with other architecture firms or when we're talking to clients. And it's like, but hey, we're not just building this to build a cool looking building. We're building it so that we can sell it or lease it, and that people can live there and have a really cool community, feeling and lifestyle in this building. And that's what's most important. I feel like that sometimes gets lost. I'm glad you said
that. And it is all derived out of the hospitality side of the firm. And like we're doing hotels now, right? It's all about an experience, and it's all about feeling like you're at a place, and that you feel good about and comfortable and whatever that means. And so it's true. I mean, and I think that, and we're trying to bring that a little bit of that creativity to some of our industrial work too, and which is maybe a little bit harder to kind of connect the dots, but like machines need. No, I'm just kidding. They but people are there too, right? People are in these sort of larger industrial projects, and there's a lot of maker space stuff happening, and yes, they need the kind of the cold grit of a hardcore warehousing or whatever it might be, but there's also going to be people interacting with this thing and coming in and out and working there and experiencing it, and then it's got to go into a community somewhere, right? So you got to have that dialogue with the community too. Like, you're putting a what? Where? A 200,000 square foot warehouse next to my house? Well, yeah. But we're going to do an awesome park or a kick-ass entry or what, and we're going to take care of some traffic issue. So there's a dialogue that has to happen. And so it's kind of like an interesting piece. But
so where do you get, speaking of like how you're designing, whether it's interiors, exteriors, or even just the, community placemaking, where do you get, well, I guess 2 parts of it. Where do you get your inspiration for that? And where do you get, the original feedback or thoughts from what the end user is going to want in the first place that will be absorbed by the market?
It is all site specific. Like, and what does that mean, right? So we go and visit sites, we walk the sites, we think about the history of a site. We're doing a cool ass project in Worcester right now, right downtown in the Canal District. It's going to be probably pretty close to the tallest building, certainly in the area. But Worcester is seeing a pretty big renaissance there, and it's on a sort of an old kind of historical site that's pretty well known. And we derived a lot of it from the history of Worcester, right? Worcester is all about innovation and sort of like forward thinking, and so this building is going to be like super sustainable. It's got like this really creative in terms of the units are we're looking at them in terms of a modular type approach, but it's very forward looking in how to sort of deliver a project that's cool but also easy to build. And so it's like, so we pulled a lot of that out. What does that mean architecturally, right? Oh, well, it's got to be kind of like put together, tight, easy to build, sort of, but clean and modern. And so it's really derived, so each project's site driven. And then like when it comes to our hospitality work, that's really riffing off the chef most of the time. Chefs come to us and they're amazing. I mean, we've dealt with so many like unbelievable chefs in the city and cooks and things, and they know their craft. Talk about an expert in their field, right? They know their craft, how they want the food to look, smell, be presented, whatever it might be, and they come with this unbelievable knowledge. But most of them don't have a clue like what a light is, what a banquet, or I mean, that's probably too much, but like but how you pull that together. So we sit and listen to them and hear about their food, taste their food, hopefully, as we
there you go.
want them to cook for
absolutely,
us.
should make
That's really the only
make that
reason
part of
I
your
go.
process. Yeah,
I gotta eat their
Tag
food.
along with Eric for a free meal.
Yeah.
anytime.
They're
Yeah.
so generous, but because they really love and believe in what they do.
Right.
And it really, I know probably this is obvious, but it's such a creative industry, like being a chef and thinking about your food, and it's so personal in so many ways. So like they come in and we just sit and talk to them and listen and go see their place or whatever they are inspired by. And then we just kind of like, through the magic of pixie dust, we kind of come up with this idea of this concept. And, and it just kind of, again, follows it through the project. Like, hey, you said you wanted it to be a nautical theme or whatever it might be. There's a million ways to do nautical, right? So we just kind of use a bunch of different precedents and pictures and ideas and thoughts and put those together and kind of like walk them through the process. So,
Cool.
yeah, it's kind of pretty amazing and it's mystifying in some weird way, but it works.
And where along the way, whether it's whatever type of project, whether it's multifamily or whether it's a restaurant or anything else, where does budget come into play in terms of what you guys are designing and how you're thinking about a project?
Always. Well, on some level. I think we like to ensure that we are not self-value engineering from day one. We try to, and this is the doodle phase, right? When we're drawing, we want to dream up front to make sure that we are not sort of limiting what the possibilities of a project might be. And that's, obviously we have parameters and constraints we have to work within the building code and all that stuff. But as we're thinking early on, we want to dream and be sort of thoughtful about how we're thinking about a project, but we don't want to limit ourselves up front. But ultimately, we know there's plenty of architects that can design the pants off us, right? They can beat us on design, but can they get it built, right? So, and that's the proof is in the pudding, because none of our developers that I know have yet come to us to say, hey, design us an amazing building that we can't build.
Or have a blank checkbook, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, they haven't come in the door yet. If I would love to talk to them.
Yeah, we would too.
RodeArchitects.com. But so they're all come in with budgets. They all have different expectations of budgets,
right?
And different ideas about what the budget means, right? And what the value of the design is. And so that's where we don't want to self-limit our upfront, and we want to talk about, like, again, we feel like we're generating value, but budget's always part of the discussion. Really, it really is. We do a bunch of benchmarking internally. Like, what did that project cost? What did this project cost? How do so we know our budget numbers, and the market's all over the damn place right now. So It's like the one thing we can't control, but I can guarantee what we will do if something's offline or array or crazy or whatever it is, we're like, okay, let's talk about it and let's figure out the right way to deal with this situation. Yeah. We talk a lot about death by 1,000 cuts. We are value engineering by 1,000 things. Yeah. So it's not like lop off that end of the building and we'll save that much. No, let's get in and kind of figure out, is the HVAC system the right one? What's going on with the piping and, whatever. We'll sort of noodle into anything we can to try to but budget's always an issue, always.
Yeah.
And honestly, especially on the restaurant work, I mean, they most of these chef-driven restaurants, some are backed by big money or investors, but most are not. They're like tired of working at their place, and they're like, I can do this on my own. Let's go. So they come in with lint, right? Which doesn't pay the bills, but it's a fun process. No, right. But it's but they come in, and we have to be responsible for that and respectful of that. We don't want there's no good. And the chatter out there is RODE can design an awesome building and get it sort of permit or whatever, but we can't build it. That does nobody any good.
So along those lines, I don't think a lot of people, even people starting out in development, have any real know the extent of your involvement throughout construction, and how important is it for you to have a functional working relationship with the contractor and just sort of educate people a little bit on just how immersed you guys are throughout the entire build. It's not like you design the building, create the plans, and then like see you later. I mean, there's so much involved there, and I just think people sometimes don't recognize that. And I kind of just want you to speak to it a little bit and how critical it is, to your point, to make sure that something goes from concept to design to actually built.
Yeah.
And built well.
And built well, right. Yeah.
It's the building industry, or building in general, is tough. It's hard, right? And our, like, I guess, sort of understood role is to, like, come up with a building. You draw it on, like, people still call them blueprints. They're not blueprints anymore, right? Drawings.
Typewriters. You got typewriters over there.
Right? And so what we're doing is we're creating the recipe to build the building, right? That is the bottom line. Like, do this, right? But at the end of the day, we're also human. I mean, we're not perfect. We're not machines. We're not. So, we need to make sure that the drawing set is being interpreted properly by the contractor, because they are not sitting at our desks while we're drawing, and they're not part of the 2 years of entitlements, and they're not part of the discussion with the client. That's our job.
Yeah.
And yes, the clients are involved, absolutely, and they will send the message of whatever, but it's our job to draw the building, own the building in terms of what we drew, and then help the contractor build it and build it right. And so we want to be involved from start to finish, because the process is just much better. But it is a difficult thing to build drawings, especially when the market is hot as hell, because nobody's giving you good pricing. No one's looking at the drawings. They're like, just throwing numbers out there or whatever it is. And so we want to be involved, but we are involved a lot. And like, probably, I don't know exactly the number, but it might be like 40% of our time.
On a project.
Yeah. Trying to think of the numbers, but like, it's a chunk.
Right.
It ain't like 15 minutes, right?
Yep.
We are there every week. We're there. I mean, and we scale that accordingly, because some projects don't need it. That's fine. But, and some of our clients, smaller ones, are builder developers. So they're like, I'm my own client. I can, if I want to change the finish on something, I want to change it. Okay, that's fine. We're not like those type folks, So it depends, but a real project that's complicated with the real thing, we're involved. We're involved weekly, doing all the submittal review, because the contractors are providing us. They're interpreting our drawings for whatever it is. This is the flooring you said you want. They send it out to their subcontractors. It comes back at submittals. We review it. That's not the flooring that we agreed to with the client, right? 2 years ago. Then we say, client, this isn't good enough, or client, are you okay with this? It's okay. Like, right. So that's where we come in and we play throughout the construction,
Check with the marketing people on those.
Check with the marketing people, right? So that's when the team when we talked earlier, like when the team is like up front together.
Yeah.
End of the line is easy peasy, right? Because we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And if I show PT a different color flooring and I'm like, we're good with it. Are you good with it? Yeah, I'm good with it. Or they're doing that in that building next door and the one down the street. And we got to differentiate ourselves, right? Like, how many times can you have white on white on white, right?
Right.
So it's
a billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, this is our white one bedroom, right?
Yeah. No, but it's so true. And we talk about this a lot too. Just assembling the full team early in the process makes everything go so much smoother.
So much better.
So much smoother. Saves cost. Delivers a better product to market. It's a constant sort of reiteration that we talk to for clients getting started on a project, and they're like, pick our brain. Probably the same thing happens to you. It's like, well, let's really dive into this and start and think about assembling the whole team now.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait till the project's under construction to start building all these pieces, because it just adds confusion and layers of potential chaos. And
no, when you hit construction, you want everything friggin' dialed in, ready to go. Nobody wants to be figuring out stuff on the construction field. I mean, they ain't helping anybody. And so, spending the time up front, which of course benefits us. But ultimately it pays much bigger dividends at the end
for
of
sure.
it. Not even a question. And people come and they say, hey, no, I know how to do it, and we'll listen. That's okay. I mean, if that's how they really want to do it. But like the projects that we all walk away together and we're like high-fiving each other and be like, damn, that was a bitch, but that was a freaking great project. That's pretty cool, right? And those are the ones that it's like, if you can keep the team together, which takes, drop the ego at the door, let's figure this out. Wow, what happened here, But if you can do that and keep the team together, then it's going to get there.
Yeah, without a doubt. And for sure, at least from my perspective, we're not just talking about the 200 unit projects like we're working on now, but it's the 10 and 20s as well. The same thing.
It's actually more important on the 10 and 20s, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it can go south fast. Whereas the 200s, you usually have a fairly good contractor who's done it before, and sure, they know the tricks, but they also know what's expected of them. It's the smaller ones that actually can go sideways fast.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of these sort of upstart developers are trying to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And you can get killed fast.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is we talk to developers all the time about this too, and you're in the same boat as that, whether you're a smaller or a larger developer, you might be doing 1 or 2 projects at a time or at any given time, and where we're doing, 15s and 20s at any given time. And so we have so many reps at bat, so to speak, to see what can go wrong, and similar with you guys on the architecture side. Just so many more things you're seeing every day, and seeing what's happening in the market, seeing what's happening from planning and designing and entitlements, and seeing what's, so all these things that a good team can bring to the table early on that can help, avoid problems or know how to solve the problems that always come up.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important.
It's so important. And I mean, for us, like I think we have like 55 active projects right now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And,
there you go.
But they're all over the place from the standpoint of like where they are in the process, right?
Yep.
Some are just like, again, chicken scratch on a piece of paper, and some are like, we're trying to get to punch list, right?
Right.
But the way we work internally is so transparent and probably annoying on a lot of levels, because we're always in each other's business and knowing but we are learning what's happening. What didn't work on that project?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't do those blah, 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 because they suck or they're
right.
not, whatever it is, right? And,
yeah.
And so you're like, no, we tried that, and you're going to save $10 or whatever it is.
But it's going to cost you 20.
20,
right.
and it's going to break and suck, right? Or whatever it is. So I think that's where, I mean, you kind of got to be a realist about it, right? You just have to be real. Like, hey, wasn't so good. And we're just warning you. You can make the decision.
Yep.
You're the client. We're happy with that, but our job is to try to warn and guide. And
yeah, totally. I mean, I think we see a lot. Like Mike said, it's at bats, right? I mean, it's like you've got. We've probably got 30 projects going in various stages, from consulting to, CO a couple days ago, literally on one of them, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you just see so many things, and I think you made a reference to it with the Worcester project, and then you just sort of alluded to it when you're talking about smaller projects.
Yeah.
So sustainability is obviously huge right now, but like knowing what the hell you're doing to actually bring that into a project, and I know that's kind of a hot button just across the board in construction and architecture and real estate development in general. And how are you guys looking at that kind of high level?
Yeah.
And then can you give a couple examples of like some, I think you've got like that project going down, is it Stoughton or something? You're doing 18 passive houses, right?
Yes.
And then, where you've seen it go really well, or you've seen it go really south, and sort of where it's trending, and just, can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think you've got way more insight on it than I do.
I mean,
for sure.
It's interesting, like the environmental movement, right? It was also like peace, love, whoa, like whatever.
That sounded way too authentic.
Yeah, which I'm good with. Don't
you
get
are,
me wrong.
yeah.
So it was
sound
like,
effects, peace, love, all that. You're just
you're like,
it's your thing.
Let's try something, right? Let's put solar on the roof and run some hoses through it, and you'll get hot water, right?
Yeah.
Wow, who fucking cares? Right. That was where it was built out of, right? But now it's like a friggin' science. Like, it's science experiment. Like, and we are doing like sustainable projects that are like friggin' Swiss watches. They're machines, right? and so you got to have blower door tests, and you tape in every damn whatever it is, but the process of making sure that gets done takes, going back to your construction, is eyes on the field and dealing with it. And so what started as like sort of this far out idea about being more sustainable is now becoming mandated by the building codes, right? Like, so it ain't like let's do something for fun because we want to do it. No, like now the buildings have to run at a certain level, right? They need to be like operating at these points. And man, if you don't hit those at like C of O and you can't produce the reports on stuff, that's a problem, because then you're like, oh shit, that unit is leaking. Where do you go? Take the drywall off, go into the freaking insulation, you go into the wall, you're going into vapor barriers, you're like, that is not a situation. So what used to be an experiment is now like really the sort of like, you got to do these things and you got to be on top of them. And we're just seeing it like, and again, I'm happy. I want us to be more sustainable. That is like my degree when we talked about back in NC State is in environmental design and architecture, which is like, and it seems like I don't even know what that was, but back then. But so we've always been sort of thoughtful about the sort of way we build, but now it's so technical that you gotta nail it and you gotta do it. And you're going to have a better product in the end. I mean, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to run better, and you're going to save energy on different things. So we're seeing like, sustainability and LEED was sort of the buzz of it all. And that's fine. It's kind of like a market driven thing a little bit, and it's still good, right? I'm not negative on it, but like, now passive house is almost kind of like the standard, right? And we just finished up in the fall Boston's first internationally sort of certified passive house projects it was 3 single family houses. And, we learned a lot on it, and our team, did an amazing job, like trying to figure it all out. The developer builder was amazing because it was like an experiment a little bit for him, but like it's very technical experiment. So, that took us a couple of years to figure out and do, but now we get it, we understand it. And like, I think we have 5 projects now that are all passive house, and it's translated to multifamily, of course. So, anywhere from 400 units, we're doing passive house, to 100 units in Cambridge. That's going to be a fully affordable housing project, passive house. And then, as you mentioned, that same developer partner that we did the 3 houses for here in Boston, we're doing an 18 house development. We guess it's kind of the suburb, but it's different. It's going to have sort of a different ethos to it too, and it'll have some amenity space and everything. But super sustainable residential houses, that's kind of badass.
Yeah, it is. What's the cost implications of this stuff?
So it varies. I mean, it's probably in the 20 to 25% something, add. So it's not nothing. Right. But, one of the things I think and this project I mentioned in Cambridge, which is, again, it's affordable housing. They're an affordable housing developer that is really, obviously, affordable housing is their priority. But right next to that or below that is a sustainable project. Okay. And the way they justify it, which I thought was sort of pretty brilliant, is they just look at the sort of overall cost, right? And it's great to be able to provide affordable housing, but if you have folks that have limited income or on a tight income, well, they can't get $700 like heating bills, right? Mm-hmm. So they're thinking about the whole picture of the residents in their affordable housing building having like a kick-ass sustainable place to live that's going to be $60 or something, because the systems are so different. They're tiny. You're like basically, the buildings are like igloo coolers, right? They are super duper tight. So they kind of, the amount of heat and air conditioning you need is minuscule. It's like a hairdryer. And the challenge is you have to circulate the air, right? Because you're basically hermetically sealed, right? And so you got to get the air exchanges to go. And those are pretty sophisticated systems that do that because it has to be automated and thinking through it a little bit and going through it. So it's really that sort of idea of like, again, being kind of like far out is like, it's technical now, so technical, and it's all about sort of sealing and dealing with sort of the kind of air penetration.
Yeah, and it also comes back to something else you said earlier, just making sure, you've got someone with experience in your team that can help walk through that, design it, and then make sure that it's built right, built well, and you're building to, these tight tolerances are required. It's not like the day where you could, oh, shit, I missed the drywall, let's slap some molding on it to cover it up.
Don't work like that anymore. Then, and it's also about like, hey, where did that offcut go?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like from the trash. Like, oh, wait, how many dumpsters we got on the site? They're like picking nails out of this and putting drywall on that one. And so it's even about sort of managing the flow of the trash going out. Right?
Yeah.
It's all a huge piece that takes eyes. And
and I would say, and it's the same thing we talk about a lot of times too, in terms of making sure the whole process from beginning. I like the word you used before, day one to day done or whatever. I think that phrase I'm going to steal.
Yeah. That just came out of my mouth, man.
Really? No way.
I swear, I don't think
I'm not giving you any credit except for right now it's stolen.
I don't think I've ever said that. That's pretty good. Maybe my office would be like, yeah, you do say it all the time. But
but the point is, we talk to clients all the time too about making sure that you've got this good team, because it mitigates not just costs of operations down the road, but mitigating risk too. If you're out, selling a project, or even if you own it long term, if it's a multifamily apartment building, is if you have all these construction defects and claims and issues down the road, that's a ton of not just cost but risk you're absorbing, because you haven't sort of assembled the team and make sure the project is designed and built well. And done in the right way to prevent that stuff from happening.
Totally. I mean, home ownership or rental, I guess we don't see a differential. I mean, sure, there's more lawsuits in home ownership, but technically, I mean, I think at least we think about our rental developers, they're always willing to sell, right? Most of them are. I mean, some like to hold on to, but usually they're looking to kind of get it ramped up, and if they can sell it, they'll sell and move. So they're still up on the market. It's a different animal altogether. But so you got to make sure these things are done to the best of the ability that that you can do. There's not a question. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next for RODE?
Good question.
I know your partner Kevin is recovering from an injury, so we wish him well.
Shout out to Kevin. Yeah. He had some surgery today, and he texted me that he got through it and he's doing good. So that's awesome. He's going to have a little bit of a recovery, but we got his back, and we'll cover him.
Just to be clear,
a good guy. Yeah.
Just you were our second choice, Eric.
So.
I was going to say he was supposed Kevin was supposed to be here. Sorry to our audience, but Eric's been
he'd be more interesting anyway. So
decent interview so far.
So
what's next? So I think we are we're excited because we're growing still, and we're not only growing like from people standpoint, which we are, we're gunning. We're almost to 40, which is kind of crazy in some weird way, but we also are doing much more regional work too. We have, I think, four or five projects in New Hampshire we're doing right now, which is kind of amazing, and they're like the sites are like amazing and beautiful. So that's pretty cool.
It's like Eddie Murphy in Spaceball. I mean,
seriously. So I think like we're seeing what we're doing in Boston translates outside of Boston, which is great. I mean, Boston, we all know that the state of play right now, it's tough here, and we still love Boston. It's our home. We want to make it better. That's what so we'll continue to work here, but it's nice to sort of be in other places where they kind of welcome you in big open arms and be like, wow, that's a good project for our town or city or whatever it is. So I think for us moving, there's going to be, we're already doing work in New York and Brooklyn and stuff. So that's another, market we see. We started kicking around some North Carolina stuff a little bit too, back to some of the roots of our,
back to the roots.
And so I think that it opens up a nice little sort of, opportunity for us to kind of get out there and do a little bit. Jess, who I mentioned, and Ben Juan, who's employee number, I guess technically 3, but because Kevin and I are 1 and 2, but Ben's our first employee, still with us. We love him to death. I don't know what's wrong with him, but
Yeah,
we just made him a principal. We made Jess and him a
I can't believe
principal.
he's made it that long with you.
I know.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with him. But, we made Jess and Ben principals this past fall, and that was a huge step for us.
Cool.
And,
Awesome.
I think that really puts us forward and putting, Kevin and I are like, we're old guys now. We're in, we got fives in our years, and Jess and Ben really represent the future of the firm. And, we're not going anywhere right now, but like we want RODE to be like something that's going to live on and really be embraced and sort of have this kind of process. So we're doing some strategic planning work, which is kind of yawning in some ways, but it's super exciting in other ways where we can kind of, sort of guide the ship and sort of really get, do what we want to do. And, I think our culture of our firm is like kind of unbelievable, to be honest. We have an amazing group of people that just kind of get it, want to be there. We're not really dealing with any of the work from home stuff. Like they're all there all the time. We had, and it's like kind of awesome. I think we both walk in and we're like, what the hell's the matter with all these people? They keep showing up. But like, I think we got some really amazing people.
Yeah.
And that's what gets us up in the morning, gets us into work. It's, they give us the sort of like, the energy, or, we're like energy vampires, like it's a little show I'm watching on Netflix right now, but or Hulu, sorry.
We don't have sponsorships on the show.
Oh, you don't?
Not yet.
Yeah. So, I think we got a lot going on, right? And we got a lot of project work, but we also have a lot of aspirations to, like, we're not going to sit back. We're going to keep pushing ourselves to do bigger, better, cooler, fun, more interesting, head-scratching stuff. So it's kind of cool. So cool.
That is very cool. So maybe to wrap up here, what since you've designed so many restaurants, what are your go-tos?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Oh man!
And then we'll have to throw in one sailing question at the end.
Oh boy,
we saved it for the whole
Here we
show.
go. Well, yeah, and I guess along both those lines, right? So 22 years, 23 now in Dorchester.
Yeah.
Like, are you like? Do you have street cred there yet? Like, do they? Can
Oh
you
my
say
God.
you're from Dorchester at this point?
No,
Like,
so-
how does that work in the neighborhood?
I mentioned karma and like I'm a believer in luck. Like you got to work hard and all that stuff. But so Marty Walsh is we like I told you a story about how we moved into Dorchester, but like it turns out like Marty Walsh is like lives 2 streets away from me.
I was about to think he was the house between you guys.
Yeah, no, but he's close, and he's he was a friend, in that time, and then he became a big supporter of RODE, and like really helped us sort of think through, and we still sort of like keep in touch with him, and and those are important things. And Dorchester is like where we kind of did this, and you sort of have to be we want to be making our neighborhood better,
Right.
And it's selfish, of course. Like I want a place to go get coffee and do that and have restaurants and do that work, and we're doing it in our neighborhood, and I think like it's really an amazing feeling to sort of be going through a public process with the people that you live next door to, right? And they might be challenging what you're saying, and that's cool and appreciate it. But when they come to you afterwards, and you're like, you know what, you're right. And like the story in 3200 is similar. Like we love the daily, we love the market we did, we love all these things, and so Dorchester will be always part of RODE, and
Cool.
vice versa. So yeah.
All right,
cool.
so back to the restaurants.
So you can't, it's like none of our projects are our favorites, but like, we did a couple restaurants for Karen Kunowitz, Fox and Knife, and Bar Volpe over in Southie. Those are
Cool. Yeah, both
unbelievable
great,
for
yeah.
some Italian fare. We're working with the Coda Group on a couple of their restaurants. SRV in the South End
that's
is
my favorite.
dynamite.
That's actually my favorite restaurant in the
Salty
city.
Pig was another one we helped them sort of redo a little bit. And, we probably have like 6 going on right now, restaurants all over the city. Steve Nookie Postal is one of our favorite early on chefs who has Commonwealth over in Kenmore Square. He's character and a half. And so, they're all amazing, and they all are sort of doing their craft. So any of them are awesome. And, whatever. they're all
Can't pick a favorite, of course.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
good.
because
Some
they're
good-
all different. You
yeah.
know, they're all really cool. So.
Some good choices, man.
Yeah,
Awesome.
they're really good.
Awesome. So, PT, do you want to ask him about tilting?
No, I'm not.
I took PT out sailing one time. The boat heeled over a little bit. He's like, I can't deal with this tilting anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, no tilting. I'll be on the golf course or get me a nice water condo with
geez.
sailboats, please. You
Come
guys
on,
have
really?
fun. Yeah, it's too much work.
It is work.
It's
work.
I don't want to work when I'm not working.
Yeah. You know, you find a friend with a sailboat, and then you're not working. You're relaxing and drinking. And
Well, now that I know you have one, maybe. I'm
Let's
not
go.
going on DiMella's
Yeah.
boat ever again.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. No, it's I've sailed almost my whole life.
Oh, nice.
I mean, you know, long time. My dad always wanted a sailboat when we were, you know, growing up, and he never got one, and he finally got one when we were like kids. And we sailed on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and it was just like awesome. And I learned so much about, you learn a lot, like responsibility and all the garbage that your parents want you to learn. And you know, we've handed that down, and you know, we have a sailboat. We live obviously in Dorchester, but they keep the sailboat at Savin Hill Yacht Club, which is 5 minutes maybe from my house.
Perfect.
And we just can, you know, jump in the car or walk and just jump on the boat and go out on an evening sail. And like, it's therapy. It's for me, it's therapy. And we've almost died a couple times, but like, hey, you know, what are you going to do about that? You know, you're going to have
Caleb,
to
cut
embrace
that
it.
part so my wife doesn't hear it, please. No, I agree with you totally. It is pretty much like therapy for us. It's a great family activity for us.
It's a
has
great
been, yeah.
family activity, and you know, you just sort of get out and you see the city in a way that you don't see it normally, and you see it at all different times and all different conditions and all that, and you know, it's just it is a cultural thing, right? In terms of like, you know, we don't do a lot of vacations. We go on the boat, right? We do stuff on the. It's a lifestyle, I guess, maybe more than anything, but it is a great thing that I just love.
And we feel the same way about it for sure. So I agree.
It's one of these moments. So it's great.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Go.
Anything we didn't ask you that we should have, or as we wrap
you
it
tell
up?
me. I'm just visiting.
Sounds like
No.
good.
I think it was great.
This was awesome. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
Really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
Really good conversation. And so as we wrap up, just want to say thanks for all the guests, and thanks for the guest, Eric. Thank you for being here. Hopefully the audience
Kevin
will...
in spirit.
Kevin in spirit. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We're thinking about him, yeah.
But I think we'll wrap it up. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to Empowered Returns, and stay tuned for our next episode. And thanks, Eric. See you soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Eric. See ya.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Empowered Returns. If you're a forward-thinking real estate investor or developer looking for actionable advice that will help you generate market-beating returns, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast fix. I'm Mike DiMella with CHARLESGATE, and I'd love to connect on LinkedIn and further the conversation for any specific questions you may have. Thank you for listening.